Hello, my name is James Arroyo, and welcome to Chapter 5 Nonverbal Communication. A lot of the message being sent across a communication channel is going to be the nonverbal communication. So, when we learn more about it, we'll be more effective at it. Some of the outcomes for today. First, we're going to be describing the power of nonverbal communication, outline the functions of nonverbal communication, aka why we do it, then describe a set of communication symbols that are nonverbal codes, in other words, how we communicate nonverbally, and then lastly, we're going to illustrate some of the influences culture, technology, and the situation have on nonverbal communication. Let's jump right in. Why is it important to learn about nonverbal communication? Guess what? The majority of what we communicate to the audience is going to be coming from nonverbal communication. Not just that, but even in a when the verbal communication and the nonverbal communication are communicating two different things, we are going to believe the nonverbal communication every time. So, nonverbal communication is the process of intentionally or unintentionally signaling meaning through behavior other than words. Let's break this down a little bit. Intentionally and unintentionally. So, while we may not intend to send something nonverbally, it still is being sent. So, because of the lack of intentionality or our inability to control our communication, that makes it a lot more believable from an audience's perspective. Also, it is signaling meaning through behavior other than words. This can include gestures. This can include eye contact, the clothes you wear, what your face is doing, all of pauses. You can even talk about how close you stand, the time orientation, how fast or slow you speak. All of these things. I mean, even the tone of your voice, all of which communicate messages. So there is a wide array of meaning that can be created through nonverbal communication. The nature of nonverbal communication is that it is communicative, meaning that you are communicating with it. Go figure. But it is often spontaneous, meaning that I have very little control over it. That is why some poker players are very good at reading the nonverbal communication behavior of their opponent so that they are able to tell whether the person has a good hand or a poor hand. In fact, there are specific things that we do non-verbally when we are lying. Some of the key ones are pupil dilation. It is also ambiguous, meaning that every gesture could have multiple meanings. So, for example, this could mean thumbs up. But if I go like this, then that may mean, I believe in some countries it means up yours. So there are multiple meanings, and it is the verbal communication at this point that could focus the meaning. And it is more believable than than verbal communication. So if I say I'm not sad, but I am crying while I'm doing it, obviously you are going to believe the nonverbal over the verbal because I have less control over it, and therefore it is more honest, or at least it's perceived as more honest. Now we move on to the functions of nonverbal communication. Why is it that we use nonverbal communication? We use it to reinforce verbal messages, substitute for verbal messages, contradict verbal messages, manage impressions and regulate interactions, create immediacy or closeness with another person, and or whatever, and deceiving others to believe something that is false. Let's jump right in. We start with reinforcing verbal messages. This could be used to repeat or mirror the verbal message. This may be beneficial if communication is challenging at this point, and by reinforcing your verbal message with a nonverbal message as well, it can complement the behavior by reinforcing it. Also, it could be even accenting specific information in the verbal message. I believe that it was uh, Bill Clinton who would use the speaker's point where he would try to accent specific information in this way. He would reinforce his message. But another example of this was in multiple times when I worked at Disneyland. I would have to talk to people of differing languages. So, because I was unable to fully communicate verbally, I had to reinforce my message with nonverbal communication. So, what you're going to do is you're going to turn straight down that way. You're going to then take a right, and then you're going to go about 5 feet down that way, and then you're going to take a left. By reinforcing it, it was communicating the message better. We also can substitute for verbal messages. This occurs when words are unavailable, inappropriate, or even unintelligible. This may be in a situation where you are unable to use that verbal communication. Guess what? Until refs had mics, they had to have these specific hand gestures so that they were able to communicate information to the players as well as to the audience. Not to mention, we also use some of this for on ships. They use flags to show here's the certain things. Also, some lights. That is where we sort of bridge the gap between verbal and nonverbal communication, but it is within that same realm. Another example, what if you have a situation where you are very angry at another driver, but obviously you aren't able to say, hey, you are awful. Instead, you can use choice nonverbal communication behaviors to then show that information. Like this. Awesome. Next, we talk about silence. Silence can also be used to substitute for verbal messages. If I am saying, I no longer want to talk to you, guess what? Ghosting could potentially take the place of this verbal communication. We move on to contradicting verbal messages. This may be unintentional. Oh, I'm not sad, as I'm crying. Or it could be intentional, as in teasing, joking, or sarcasm. Oh, these videos are amazing. I love them. They are so funny. Ha 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 ha. That would be contradicting the verbal message, because while I am saying that the video is very good and the jokes are very funny, my nonverbal is stating that it is not. What's believed more, the verbal or the nonverbal? In a channel discrepancy, the nonverbal is believed, and therefore you understand that that is in fact a joke, and a very bad one at that. Also, we manage impressions and regulate interactions. Interaction management occurs throughout a relationship. There are times when we are growing the relationship. There are some times when we are establishing our own identity, and a lot of that comes from the nonverbal communication we use. They also can regulate the back and forth of the communication. A good example of how interaction management occurs throughout a relationship is how close you stand, as well as how much touch you do in the relationship. In romantic relationships, there may not be a lot of touch beyond shoulder and hand. But as the romantic relationship develops, it can go to the mouth and other places. We also use nonverbal cues to regulate the back and forth. When I stop talking, then you start talking. I'm glad you said it. So we want to be sure. So this all helps with regulating the interaction. We also can create immediacy or closeness with another person. Eye contact, smiling, appropriate touching, and mimicry or convergence within communication accommodation theory show this closeness and connection with another person. Look at the cast of Friends. What are some of the behaviors that they are using to show immediacy or closeness with the other person? Not just touching, also smiling, and I don't know, all of those things. We also can deceive others into believing something that is false. A lot of Machiavellian people or people who are trying to trick others will use a lot of the nonverbal communication to show immediacy for the sole purpose of manipulation. So, obviously, we have to be careful that we are not exclusively basing our impressions on nonverbal communication, but we also want to be, but we do get a lot of meaning from our nonverbal. So we've talked about the functions of nonverbal communication. With all of these functions, with all these things that nonverbal communication can do, why is it so easy for us to understand them? A big reason for that is through practice and through schemas, those interconnected bits of information, and not to mention the context, not to mention the verbal cues as well. So communication is kind of like a shotgun blast, that it hits all sorts of things, and then the audience has to pick and choose and try to manage these meanings and coordinate the meaning with the other person. So this is the why we do nonverbal communication. Now we get into the how we do nonverbal. We do nonverbal communication through codes, which are symbols we use to send messages without or in addition to words. Let's jump right in. The how includes gestures and body movements, facial expressions, eye behavior, voice, physical appearance, space and environment, touch, and time orientation. Let's jump right in. We start with gestures and body movements that send nonverbal messages. One example of this could be an emblem. An emblem has a direct verbal translation within a group or culture. What does this one mean? May mean one. What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? Obviously, these all have direct verbal messages, direct verbal meanings, and as a result, uh, um, and communicate. Also, we have illustrators. They help visually explain what is being said. Saying, I caught a fish that was this big, or guiding someone through a set of directions. First, you turn right, then you turn left, then you go down about 5 yards, and then you turn left again. We also have regulators. They manage interactions as well. So if I go like this, then the implication is that I am waiting for you to speak as well. Some other kinesics or gestures could potentially be adapters. They satisfy a physiological need. So when you yawn, that communicates something. Also, when you are anxious, that can also communicate something, and it is satisfying a physiological need. In the same way, when you are super sad, you may cry. But this also is where we sort of bridge the gap to affect displays, which convey meanings, feelings, moods, and reactions to things. So that may be crying. It could also mean the fist bump of success, or fist pump, I guess I should say. And all of these things show what I am feeling. So we know our behaviors can reflect our emotions, but do they affect our emotions? Amy Cuddy says yes.
In our studies, if people stand like Wonder Woman for 2 minutes, their testosterone increases significantly, their cortisol drops significantly, they are more risk-taking. In other people's studies, we find that their pain threshold is higher, they think more abstractly, and they are more likely to do well in very stressful situations like interviewing for a job. Wonder Woman.
So you may have heard that some of these claims were debunked, especially the testosterone and cortisol levels. But another study has also then shown these relations. And the main reason why we discuss it is because it does have a mental effect on us. So while, yes, there may be some disagreement between the magnitude of the effect of power poses or big gestures that show power and therefore make us feel more powerful, it does help us in a lot of mental ways and affects our emotions. Also, is sign language kinesics? Funny enough, it is not. Because while, yes, the deaf community does not have the ability to, well, they have the ability to speak, but it is a bigger challenge due to not being able to hear. Their gestures act as those words. So while, yes, it's within that gray area of emblems, it is a code that is the sender is using to send messages. We also have facial expressions that can act as this nonverbal code as well. These are 7 facial expressions that tend to span across cultures, even those who are blind and are unable to see others do these facial expressions, aka not be able to socially learn these behaviors, still exhibit these when they are happy, surprised, etc. But with facial expressions, there are several facial expressions that communicate across cultures. Those would be them. But we also have masking. And this is where we hide our facial expression for the act of deceit. But obviously, this can be done in very unethical ways, but it can also be done to spare someone's feelings. For example, if you got one day I wanted an Xbox so incredibly badly, and I tried to convince my parents. I even wrote them a persuasive speech or persuasive essay. So I was like, I'm definitely getting an Xbox now. Christmas comes up, and there's a big box under the tree with Xbox wrapping paper. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the Xbox. But I'm like, just trying to preserve it. I open it up, and I tear open the box, and inside are Xbox boxers. I was obviously livid, but I would not give my parents the satisfaction and instead was tried to mask my behavior and said, "Oh, thank you. This is very nice," trying to smile. But obviously, it was a lot more challenging to do. So we mask to preserve other people's feelings, but others may use masking for unethical purposes to try to deceive others. We also have oculesics, or the eye behavior and how that communicates. There is a great deal of meaning that can be communicated from the eyes, but there are also differences between cultures. For example, for our culture, eye contact in a classroom from student to teacher is expected. It shows that you're listening to me. Which is why I actually find it interesting that some people, when asked why they are anxious about public speaking, a big one is that they feel like they are being watched, when that just simply shows that you are listening. But in certain Asian cultures, eye contact from student to teacher is seen as a sign of disrespect. It could also be shown as a sign of uh, defiance. And overall, it is not seen as a good thing. We also have voice, or paralanguage. Paralanguage are vocalized sounds that accompany the words. They include pitch variations, either talking really high or talking really low. We have tone, we have volume, loudness or quietness, pauses of how much you pause. Also, you have vocal quality. So, do you have a very deep voice like Morgan Freeman or Christopher Walken or Scarlett Johansson or whoever? We every single person has different vocal qualities, rhythm, how the rhythm at which you speak, as well as the rate of speaking very fast or speaking very slow. Let's watch to see what this Elcor ambassador speaks like.
Pleased greeting. Human, it is always good to see your kind. I am Ambassador Kalen. Genuine query. Is there something I can do for you this day?
Why do you explain what you're about to say?
Our people communicate less through words and more through scent and slight movements. Plainly, we discovered our vocal expression was not enough to convey the feelings of our conversations to other species.
Why do you bother, Kalen? These Earth Clan don't really care about our ways.
Ooh, total burn. So, due to the fact that there was not a lot of vocalized sounds accompanying the words, they had to adapt and show through verbal communication what they are feeling. Also, we have vocalizations. They are cues about our emotional or physical state. So we may have some back channel cues showing how we are feeling, like grunts or sobs or exasperation. Those all show that nonverbal are using our voice to communicate something.
Remorse.
We also have physical appearance. Guess what? Attractiveness has its advantages. Those who are attractive on average tend to be seen as more good or ethical. This may be due to some of the schemas that we associate, because we tend to watch movies, we tend to watch TV shows where these very attractive people tend to do very heroic things, and we subtly create these schemas for ourselves. We also have artifacts, or the accessories that we wear. This may mean glasses. Glasses mean I'm smart, obviously. No, just kidding. But we also have a suit and tie that communicates something. A very nice watch communicates something. A very nice car communicates something. And all of these physical appearance things communicate something. But they can convey different messages that may change over time. Uh, a common example of this is back in medieval times, someone who was more heavy was seen as more attractive because they were able to feed themselves and therefore showed that they were well off. We also have space. Space can also communicate something. Proxemics, or how closely we stand, or how we communicate with space, that shows something. If we are within 0 to 18 inches, that may be this intimate space where we are with how close we are to those who we are intimate to. Personal, probably 18 to 4 feet. 4 to 12 feet would be social, and public would be 12 and beyond. Just imagine if a person who was doing a large public speech was standing maybe 8 to 4 inch feet from the front row. That would be a little bit shocking, and the person may be within, and the front row may be in the splash zone. In the same way, we also, if someone we are really close to, we don't stand very close to, that would be shocking in the opposite way. So, how does he violate the norms of proxemics, and how do the receivers react?
What'll we do?
It's us.
Come on up. So, Elaine, you don't have a problem with her, do you?
We adore Elaine.
She wants to say hi. She's with her new boyfriend.
What's he like?
He's nice, bit of a close talker.
A what?
You'll see.
This is Erin.
Hello, Aaron.
Hello, Aaron.
So how long are you folks in town?
3 more days, and then we're off to Paris.
We're going with the select charter group.
I love France. I was just there last year. In fact, you know, I still have an envelope full of French francs. I'll give them to you.
Oh, we can't take money.
Oh, no, it's a gift from us.
Oh, that is so nice, Erin. Isn't he nice? So listen, has Jerry been showing you a good time?
No, I haven't.
You know, I have a friend who works at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. How'd you like a behind-the-scenes tour?
Really? You could do that?
Easily.
It wouldn't be any trouble?
Of course not.
When can we go?
How about right now?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, let me get my coat.
So, obviously, he's standing very, very close to the receiver. And some of the ways that especially the woman in purple was doing was she was going back a little bit with her head. Not to mention, one that you may not have noticed was that she was also clasping her hands in front of her, thereby showing this sort of powerless pose. And it's interesting to note that in regards to powerful versus powerless nonverbal communication, just like how power is finite, the person who exhibits the more powerful position, aka the close talker who's right in someone's face, the other person does the opposite nonverbal communication expression. So they then go more powerless, backing up, closing off, making themselves smaller.
Elaine, what do you...
So we also have space and environment. This also communicates something. Territoriality is the claiming of an area through continuous or implied occupation. Have you ever had a time when you had claimed seat savers, or you had called shotgun, that is that sort of territoriality. And if someone breaks that, then obviously they are no longer a friend. Also, environment. The arranging of your surroundings to encourage or discourage interactions. Note the one on the top, that what sort of interactions would be in this top corner? Obviously, it would be more, it could potentially be more small group communication, whereas setting 2 would probably be more large group communication, but the teacher would only would have as much input as the rest of the group, whereas setting 3, the teacher may communicate all throughout while everyone else, the audience, listens. Or this one where the teacher talks, the audience listens, and the audience is also able to talk to themselves. So there are a lot of different ways that we can encourage or discourage communication in these sorts of teaching settings. Another good example of this is cubicles. Cubicles have a very good are very good at trying to discourage interaction, because since no one is able to see each other, therefore they can stay on task, or at least that's the idea. Then we also have touch. Touch, or haptics, may include functional professional touch. For example, am uh, if I'm giving money to a cashier and a cashier touches my hand, then I understand that that doesn't really mean anything. It is just for function. In the same way, if I am on a boat or going onto a boat and someone is there to hold my hand as I climb into the boat, I understand that this is functional professional touch. In the same way, we also have social polite touch, where when we are polite, we may shake hands, we may high five, we may do things like that. Friendship warmth touch is again is an escalation of this, showing friendship and warmth. Uh, Hand on the shoulder, a hug, something like that in the same, and then an escalation of that would be love and intimacy touch, where we would, maybe hugging, kissing, hand on the face, stuff like that to show love. Then we have sexual arousal touch. This may mean bow chicka bow wow. Moving forward. We also communicate with time orientation. Chronemics is the way people perceive and value time, structure time, and react to time. This can vary across cultures, and it definitely communicates something. Think about if you were to run late to a job interview, what would that communicate? Or running late to a first date, or showing up on time to a party. What does that communicate? So these do change across situations, but they also change across cultures. There are monochronic cultures that value and structure time. The adage of this group would be time is money, whereas polychronic cultures do not put as much value on time, and it gets done when it gets done. Sending a message using time may be confusing in certain situations, though. So, we've talked about the how we create meaning, but there are a few other influences that affect meaning. One is culture. There are contact cultures and there are non-contact cultures, which have different sensitivity levels to touch. Our American culture, people tend not to like to be touched. Go figure. But in other cultures, touch is not just uh, 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 understood, or it is not just accepted, it is actually expected. So that if you were with a friend, another male friend or another female friend, you may be expected to hold their hand, because that shows this friendship. And in those sorts of cultures, there may be codified rules of friendship in that respect through holding hands. We also have sex and gender. Sex and gender can influence a person's degree of touch, eye contact, or how nonverbal communication is interpreted. If you hug another guy, that would be a little bit weird. If you hug your significant other, that may not be as weird. So this all changes across sex and gender. Makes sense. We also have mediated nonverbal communication. When we communicate across technology, we tend to lose a lot of these paralinguistic cues, aka how we say the words. Emoticons and font size and punctuation and capitalization can convey meaning and help with this, but still, even so, a lot of the meaning gets lost through technology. So we have to understand that and avoid it in certain situations. Sorry, I could not find a censored version of this. Why is there a miscommunication in this situation?
I've been trying to reach out to you all day. Are we on for tonight? Jeez.
What? You can't catch me. You can't catch me. I'm Lance Moore. Touchdown, bitch. What? Pause. Oh, shoot. Keegan's been texting me. Sorry, dude. Missed your texts. I assumed we'd meet at the bar. Whatever. I don't care.
Sorry, dude, missed your texts. I assumed we'd meet at the bar. Whatever, I don't care. Whatever, I don't care? The fuck is his problem? Do you even want to hang out?
Do you even want to hang out? Oh, that's considerate. Like I said, whatever.
Like I said, whatever? Fuck this guy! Jesus, you
are fucking priceless. Aww. You're the
one who's fucking priceless? This motherfucker right here. Oh, he wants to. Okay. Okay. You want to go
right now? Huh. Guess I could do that. Okay.
Okay, let's go. He said, okay. Okay, let's go. All right, you know what? You know what? You want to really
do this now? Keegan, you nut. You're not putting me out.
Fuck yeah, let's do it. Oh, you fucking asshole.
First round's mine.
Oh, no. Oh, no, there ain't gonna be no rounds, asshole. It's gonna be a fucking street fight. This son of a...
Cause tonight we gonna party.
No!
Buddy! Like I said, first round's mine. A beer and a gimlet. For my partner, right? What's that?
I got you a baseball bat with nails in it.
For my post-apocalyptic Jackie Robinson costume. How did you know?
So, as you can see, this there was in fact miscommunication, and a big part of it was the loss of paralinguistic cues. That because he was communicating in a because they were communicating through text, the message was distorted based off of their own emotional frame of mind. So, especially in conflict situations, we should Keep in mind that we lose paralinguistic cues through text and through technologically mediated channels, so we want to try to avoid it. And then lastly, situational context determines rules and behaviors and roles people must play under different conditions. When you are in public or private, that will change how you communicate nonverbally. Physical space can affect the nonverbal communication, so this is why it may be awkward if people are communicating too many public displays of affection in a very public situation versus in a private situation or a more private situation. This may not be seen as such a violation of our expectations. In the same way, we also have informal versus formal. The perceptions about personal versus impersonal situations then affect our nonverbal communication as well. That concludes nonverbal communication. Have a great rest of your day.